UCLA was the worst team in Power 4 football. There wasn't much hope of them winning a game after being blown out by New Mexico of all teams. To put in perspective just how bad they were, take a look at the average point differential in the Big Ten. As you can see, almost all of them were in the positive, and most of them were averaging 20 or more points per game more than their opponents. The only ones in the negative were Northwestern, and then a good bit below them, you have UCLA. Their average margin of defeat was 21.7 points. 21.7, even after playing UNLV and New Mexico. Not only were they getting blown out by everyone, they also hadn't led once all season. That was until their biggest test of the year against Penn State, when they led the entire game and sent Penn State home with a demoralizing loss. So how in the world did they manage to beat a team of Penn State's caliber when New Mexico and UNLV had proven to be too much for them? And for that matter, how did they win again this week? UCLA was totally left for dead, but suddenly they've reeled off 2 in a row against good competition. Is this the turning point for UCLA? Going into the 2024 season, UCLA had 3 straight 8+ win seasons. They weren't quite as good as they wanted, but they weren't far off. That was until Deshaun Foster took over. Foster was a young, energetic coach, a guy players seemed to love. He brought energy to the locker room, enthusiasm to practice, and a sense of connection that players responded to. He was the kind of guy who'd pat you on the helmet after a bad play and keep you motivated. But while the energy was great, the results just weren't there. UCLA went 8-5 the year before Foster, but in his first season they dropped to 5-7. Even though they went backwards, most people assumed it was just growing pains, that he lost some key players and hadn't had time to fully build his group yet. But then came the start of year 2, and things spiraled fast. The team opened 0-3, looking lifeless, sloppy, and completely outmatched, not just by ranked teams, but by programs that were supposed to be below them. There was virtually no hope of winning even against bad competition, and that was it for Foster. Early in year 2, he was already let go, and this is where the turning point came. The man now taking over the operation is Tim Skipper. Skipper hasn't been overly successful in his brief head coaching career. He went 7-7 in his time at Fresno State, and that includes a stint as interim for the Bulldogs in a 2023 bowl game and all of the following season. After going 6-7 in his full season, Fresno decided not to keep him permanently. He wasn't all that bad, but not good enough to get the job. After leaving Fresno, he joined UCLA as the lead assistant. So when Foster was fired, it made sense that Skipper would be the next man up. Once again, he was stepping into an interim role, but this time he's making the most of it. Skipper has done a phenomenal job turning this team around in just a few short weeks. He took a group that had been outscored 108-43 in their first 3 games and turned them into a team that's now outscoring better competition 94-67 over the last 3. That's a ridiculous turnaround. Probably the biggest change though, and the star of the story, has been the interim offensive coordinator, Jerry Neuheisel. Neuheisel, the 33-year-old tight ends coach, has had a relatively short coaching career, but this season he's made a massive impression. Before being promoted to offensive coordinator, he was an offensive quality control coach at Texas A&M in 2017, then joined UCLA as a graduate assistant in 2018. In 2021, he was named wide receivers coach, and by 2024, he had become the tight ends coach as well as an assistant head coach. When Foster was fired and Skipper was promoted, Neuheisel took on play calling duties, and the results have been incredible. Before he took over, UCLA's offense was averaging just 14.3 points per game, towards the bottom of the Power 4 and all of college football for that matter. Since Neuheisel became the offensive coordinator, they've averaged 31.3 points per game. That's a 17-point increase, one of the largest midseason turnarounds in recent college football memory. So what exactly has changed? Just this past week, UCLA ran for 238 yards and passed for 180 against Michigan State. The week before that, they rushed for 269 and threw for 169 against Penn State, a team that was averaging just 122 rush yards per game earlier in the season, has exploded for 253.5 yards per game in what's actually been the toughest part of their schedule. The passing numbers don't jump off the page. They're actually down about 25 yards per game since the coaching change, but the passing efficiency has quietly improved across the board. Quarterback Nico Iamaleava's completion percentage has climbed from 63.9% to 69.3%. his yards per completion have jumped from 9.8 to 10.1, and his yards per attempt are up from 6.27 to 7.01. On top of that, his rushing production has increased from 46.3 yards per game to 65.3. So while the passing totals aren't wildly different, the quality of those plays and the confidence behind them absolutely are. The offense finally looks comfortable, balanced, and effective. While the defensive difference hasn't been quite as significant, their improvement has also been big. The defense was giving up 36 points per game before Skipper took over, and since then it's dropped down to 22.3. Quick timeout. If you're enjoying this breakdown and want more deep dives like this every week, make sure to hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel grow, and it guarantees you won't miss the next one. Back to the video. The team overall has significantly improved on both sides, and it's only been 3 games. The numbers are also down a little from their first game with the new coaches, being worse than the last 2 games when the coaches actually had some time to make adjustments. There's still so much room for improvement as the new coaches get more time with the team. But beyond the stats and schemes, the biggest difference is energy. This team just looks alive again. On the sideline, players are celebrating every big play. They aren't giving up early in games anymore, and they aren't going into games fully expecting to lose or even be blown out. Without the coaching change, the team probably would have gone into the Penn State game looking like they were walking into their own execution. But that's not what we've seen with the new coaches. It's a complete shift from the flat, frustrated, and defeated group we saw earlier in the season. And then there's the fan base. For the first time all season, there's real buzz around the program. UCLA fans who had all but checked out after the New Mexico loss are suddenly back online talking about bowl eligibility and even daring to ask, could Skipper keep this job long term? When you think about interim coaches, most fans don't picture a good coach, but there are certainly good coaches out there who got their beginning as the interim head coach. Dabo Swinney, one of the better coaches in the history of college football, was named the interim head coach for Clemson back in 2008. Fast forward to 2025, he's won 2 national championships, and he's been the greatest coach in Clemson football history. Ed Orgeron, who in 2019 built the best LSU team ever, and arguably the best team in college football ever, was initially their interim coach back in 2016. And the most recent example is Ryan Day at Ohio State. He took over late in the 2018 season. Fast forward to now, and he's just won a national championship last season. So while we don't have much sample size yet, there's no reason to write off Tim Skipper just because he's the interim coach. Some of the most successful coaches who have built incredible teams started those runs as interim coaches. It's still early, of course. 2 or 3 games don't erase an ugly start, and there's a long road ahead, but the turnaround is undeniable. You don't go from lifeless to taking down a ranked team and controlling back-to-back Power 4 games without something truly changing. It's not just that they're playing better, they believe again, and belief is everything in college football. If this continues, if they keep playing disciplined, inspired football, then UCLA might be on the verge of something bigger than just a mid-season turnaround. They might have found their identity again. Maybe this is the turning point the program has been waiting for, a moment where everything finally starts to click. Because a month ago, UCLA football looked finished, but now they've got life, they've got purpose, and they've got momentum. And sometimes, that's all it takes to change everything.